All right, welcome in everybody. This is Jared Palmgren, host of the Chase of the Natty podcast. We are doing another live mock draft. We're switching things up just slightly here. We're going a little bit longer tonight. We've been normally doing 20 rounds. We're going to do 25 rounds tonight. And because of that, we're going to move from one quarterback to two quarterbacks for this best ball here. It was something that a lot of people who were participating, who were interested in, said like, hey, I would love to participate, but I really don't like one quarterback leagues. And I'm like, you know what? We can go a little longer tonight and we can get two quarterbacks in. But joining me tonight is an incredibly smart human being. Dude is an absolute wizard behind the scenes in terms of understanding almost every little detail you could ever want to about all 131 FBS teams. And I'm sure he's got knowledge of FCS teams as well. It is Mr. Nicholas Ian Allen, owner of CFB Winning Edge. Nick, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Doing great. I appreciate you having me, and thank you for the kind words. Too much, I'd say.
No, not too much, dude. You are absolutely incredible in what you do. I use your content all the time. Guys, if you're listening to this right now, go subscribe to CFB Winning Edge on his Patreon. I believe I put a link down in the description. Just click on that. Go over there. It's like, what, $5 a month, Nick, for just oodles of content?
Yeah, we've got different levels. $5 for tier 1, 15 for tier 2. But that gives you access to a bunch more stuff. So yeah, check us out, patreon.com/CFB Winning Edge, and reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm always happy to tell people a little bit about what we do.
Yep. Again, he's got spreadsheets for like almost every team you could ever want to. And if you're in an IDP league, I know there's not a ton of content out there for you guys and everything. Nick's stuff, you have your own IDP rankings, if I remember correctly. You just is this your first year putting those out, or did you put those out last year as well?
This was the first time. Meant to last year, and it just unfortunately didn't happen in time. But it was something I've been wanting to do. Dipped my toe in a little bit on IDP last year, and noticed that there wasn't a whole lot out there, for folks who are looking. And a lot of the work we do with projected depth charts and a lot of the data is, both sides of the football. And that's helpful when, defense and special teams are part of the mix. But also, we drill down player by player in everything we do, player ratings, individual player ratings, all that good stuff. So it was a pretty natural step. And this year, the IDP rankings are pretty basic, but did want to, put some out and give it a try, and we'll see how they work, and then hope to get a little more sophisticated next year and moving forward.
I'm sure anybody who's playing IDP is just lapping that stuff up right now, dude. Again, you're right. People just don't get enough content for that kind of stuff, so I think they will take anything they can get. And I'm sure you're talking about your content being sophisticated. Man, you're probably eons past what these people have, or what these guys have ever had in terms of content. So I'm sure
you're talking me up too much. Under promise, over deliver is one of my mantras. So, I do appreciate the kind words.
Anyway, we do have a question in the chat here from Baylor Bear. First of all, thank you for the kind words, Baylor Bear. He's saying he subbed to the channel after he saw this awesome CFF content. Not too many channels out here on CFF. He's asking, do we think Deuce Vaughn will drop off from his stats from last year? Nick, do you want to take that first, or do you want me to go first on it?
My biggest concern, really the only reason I would think that we would see any significant drop. I mean, any player is capable of going a little higher, a little lower, and Deuce Vaughn was incredibly productive each of the last 2 years. But the fact that Adrian Martinez is now his quarterback, and he's not necessarily a different style of player than Skylar Thompson, even though Skylar Thompson was a little less mobile last year, has certainly dealt with some injuries. But I do think that there's a possibility that Adrian Martinez, just scores more on the ground. And so kind of limit Deuce Vaughn's, touchdown numbers, basically. But the thing that kind of offsets that a little bit is Deuce Vaughn can score from, 30, 40, 50 yards out.
Yep.
So I'm torn a little bit. I think that it's possible we see some natural regression, and Adrian Martinez might, steal a couple of rushing touchdowns from him. But overall, I'm not too worried. I mean, he's one of the best players in college football, and they like to feed him. So I think he's going to be just fine. I've drafted him as many times as I could if I'm, middle of the first round.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same camp as you, where obviously Adrian Martinez is a concern, but it would be a very different concern if they didn't have dual threat quarterbacks in the past. Because, like, again, Skylar Thompson, I forget the other guy's name before him. Will Howard was also kind of a dual threat guy whenever he was playing instead of Skylar Thompson. So it's not like they're going from a major change there, and there's just an entirely new dynamic in that offense. Now, again, I also agree with you. Adrian Martinez is known for vulturing touchdowns for the Nebraska Cornhuskers, so I imagine he'll probably do a little bit of the same there. But in terms of just actual production, I'm looking at the prize picks. They put out a line for Deuce Vaughn. They put him at 1,320 rushing yards for the 13-week regular season. And that's, I think, a little lower than what he did last year. I think that's about right. He's gonna be one of those guys that's gonna score through the air and on the ground. Probably a little bit of touchdown regression compared to where he was last year, but I don't think it's gonna be anything you're gonna regret taking him in the first round for.
One of the things that we do offer, and we completely rebuilt this projection model this year. Pretty proud of it. Think it's certainly not perfect, but it has a chance to be pretty valuable. Hopefully, calls for Deuce Vaughn to get over 50% of Kansas State's rushing attempts. And based on the last 3 years of performance by the team, the head coach and offensive coordinator for each team, we run all those numbers. Deuce Vaughn, right now we project a little over 1,100 yards. So that would come under. And so that's, I guess a decent edge there. If you said his numbers were in the 13s. So I'd take an under before and over 9 times out of 10 anyway, just because anything can happen, injuries, all that good stuff. But the fact that, coming off his past performance the last couple of years, seeing that number as an under already, I'd lean the under for Deuce Vaughn.
Yeah, I can definitely agree. And if you guys have any more questions, you got a couple more minutes before the draft really gets started here. Go ahead and drop them in the chat. And if you, again, let's put this chat function to use. I got it up here on the stream for you guys this time. I'm not going to lie. It took me a long time to get that right. So I would appreciate if we're very much using the chat tonight. In addition, I am seeing our numbers right now. We peaked at a pretty good amount here, y'all. Keep sharing this stream. Any of your guys, any of your friends who might play CFF, any of y'all who are in your leagues, got league chats and stuff like that, just drop this in there. Let's get these viewership numbers up. I want to see if we can break our viewership record for tonight. And then also drop a like. Again, there's like 20 of y'all in the chat right now, or in the viewing this right now. I see only 5 likes. Let's get those likes up a little bit, all right? Like y'all are right there. But again, like I said, you got any more questions, go ahead and drop them in. But we are fixing to get started here. Nick, you have the 101. So I guess it's not really much of a spoiler if I just go ahead and ask you and say, hey, who you picking?
I thought about it a little bit, and I initially thought about going with Bijan Robinson, but he's actually my running back number 2 behind Travion Henderson. And I got to thinking, I've been doing a lot of best balls this year, probably 3-4 times more than I have done the last few years. And I've noticed that if I don't go wide receiver pretty early in the first couple of rounds, I have a tendency to almost punt until the 6th, 7th round. And then I feel like obligated to just take a big bunch of wide receivers in the middle rounds and just sort of hope that by volume, I'll be able to pick up some diamonds in the rough or underrated, whatever your term is. And so I figured, you know what, I will just go with Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's a great player, and it doesn't get much better than his early projections. I can just slot away that number one receiver. And
Draft
then
is going, by the way. I don't know if you
absolutely. And then that way I won't, get myself in trouble maybe, because I do have a tendency to push wide receivers down if I, don't take one in the first couple of rounds.
That's kind of how I'm feeling with running back this year. Again, I had a whole big discussion with Mitch Hart on CTN a couple weeks ago where we were talking about like which positions to fade, which ones to kind of target. And he was very big on fade running back and all of that. But like, man, if I don't take at least one running back in the first 3 rounds, I really find that I am just not a big fan of the teams that I like, usually by the end of those drafts of those teams. So I feel like you're kind of the same way with wide receiver. Let's see. Bijan, Travion, no surprise there. Again, I'm sitting here at the 109, so I just kind of have to see what falls to me. But this is where I prefer drafting. I've been really liking what you can get on that 1-2 turn. There's always at least one stud that falls to you. So I think that is probably, again, I'm hoping that I can really get a second stud coming back to me. So we will definitely see. I'm going to continue adding some people in my queue here. Matt, how you doing, sir? Matt's in the chat. And hello there, Yeet Yeet Boss. Love that I can just get to say that. And Baylor Bear, don't worry if you're the only one asking questions, man. Again, if you're the only one asking questions in a public chat, dude, like that's just like a free 101 with me and Nick. Like, come on, like you gotta love that.
Whatever you got, I gotta feel however much time between picks. I'm usually an auto drafter, so this actually has thrown me off a little bit, but I have a certain amount of guys that I like. I'm kind of on autopilot, so ask away. Give us something to talk about.
So Xavier Worthy is the second wide receiver to come off here. Usually, I typically see A.T. Perry kind of come off before him. So that's kind of interesting. Deuce Vaughn comes off right off the board. Oh, there's A.T. Perry. There he goes. All right, so I'm on the clock now. Man. Now I get flustered. See, you're not the only one who gets flustered, Nick. Let's see. How do I want to go about this? Okay. I think I know how I want to do this. It's half-point PPR, but I'll go ahead and take the Wisconsin running back. I'll take Braylon Allen. Reception work's not going to be there, but again, if he truly is this next Wisconsin running back that's going to get all of the carries, then I'm not going to regret that pick whatsoever. Rasheen Ali was another one I was considering right there.
Do you think he's going to get all the carries, though? That's a question I have. I love Braylon Allen.
I think
incredibly fun to watch.
I think it'd be hard not to.
As a true freshman, obviously, it's difficult to establish yourself as the number one guy at a Power 5 program like Wisconsin, even though they have had obviously some freshman running backs in the past. But Ches Malusi was pretty productive early in the year, was a starter, didn't do anything to lose that number one spot other than get injured. So I'm not saying he comes back and takes the job from Braylon Allen, but assuming he comes back healthy, early on, ready to contribute early in the season, I don't necessarily anticipate he gets Allen. I mean, just a crazy heavy workload, because he won't have to. They have another guy they can trust. So as much as I love Allen, I don't know if I have a single share of him because, in that spot where you took him, certainly reasonable.
Yeah.
But I do think that I might go with somebody that either has a little bit more pass opportunity, more opportunities to contribute as a receiver, or gets a little bit more guaranteed heavy workload. I think Allen's certainly capable of it. I'm just not 100% sure he's going to get it.
No. And I definitely get the concerns on him. Again, like, to me, he is still one of the top 7 running backs. Again, I have a clear tier of 7 running backs that I think are just like almost can't misses. Allen definitely has, again, you're right. The question mark of Ches Malusi is still there, But at the same time, like, I saw Allen down the stretch, like after he took over that starting role, he finished under 100 yards one time. And
Oh yeah, he's
and
incredible,
and that
and you
was
can't go wrong. I have a tendency to overthink things sometimes.
yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty extreme. I either don't think at all or I overthink it. So it's probably me overthinking, but I don't know. I'm just a
No,
little bit cautious, I guess, with him.
no. Again, if you get down to it with any of these guys, you can nitpick every single one of these picks to death. Because again, there's no such thing as a guaranteed pick, but there's some pretty close to ones out there. One just kind of came off the board there. CJ Stroud, 2-2 in a 2-quarterback league. I think that was fantastic value right there. Let's see. And there was another great value right there. In fact, Agvent just sniped me right there. I was hoping that either CJ Williams or CJ Stroud might have fallen to me there in the second round. But that's okay. That's okay. You just gotta adapt sometimes. And if this was redraft, I would probably go towards Bryce Young. But because we are looking at a best ball scenario, I'm gonna go with the guy that they actually let run and get some scores on the ground. And so I'm gonna go ahead and take Hendon Hooker here, quarterback out of Tennessee. In redraft, I would much rather have the Alabama quarterback that I know is going to be in a good matchup any given week. The only thing I have to worry about is how early they take him out. And quite frankly, Saban's gotten to the point where he doesn't really take his guys out all that early.
Yeah, Bryce Young's actually my number one projected. Again, just those projections I referred to with Deuce Vaughn, where it only takes into account past results of the team and the coaching staff. He's my number one projected quarterback, both in 6 passing points per touchdown and 4 points per passing touchdown. So that was a little bit of a surprise. I know I had been, steering towards CJ Stroud early on. I know there's certainly some folks who think that Caleb Williams should be that first guy taken. But yeah, Bryce Young is, at least the way I project things.
Speaking of which, there he goes.
Got a chance to be, the number one quarterback.
Oh, yeah. Matt says in the chat, 2 Vols in the top 16 picks. What world are we living in? That's the power of system in CFF, my friend. You make a hire like Josh Heupel, and he brings his offensive system along with you. There you go.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just saying on that topic, one of the things that I wanted to do this year was project pace. And Tennessee is pretty much a runaway number one, less than 21 seconds between snaps. So, not only are those good players, but they are going to get more snaps, more opportunities than maybe anybody else in college football.
Wow, look at that quarterback run right there. Stroud, Williams, Hooker, Cunningham, Young, Hartman. Just boom, 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 boom. All off the board right there. And honestly, it pushed a guy down that I thought has been going too early in drafts recently, and that's Jordan Addison. I like him much better here towards the tail end of the second round than where he was going in the tail end of the first round. Because that put him in the same tier as a guy like Xavier Worthy, A.T. Perry, Cedric Tillman. I think there's just a little bit more question marks to go along with Jordan Addison. What do you think about Jordan Addison?
I think Jordan Addison is an incredibly talented player. Loved, watching him play the last couple of years at Pitt. I think he'll be great at USC. My only major concern is he wasn't the only wide receiver they brought in, and they had a handful of, really highly rated recruits over the past few years. Not all, of course, have panned out, but there's a long list of potential contributing receivers. And though I think Addison's going to be, the top target easily, there's a chance that USC spreads the ball around a little bit more than Pitt did. So there's just a little bit of concern on my end. But nothing too crazy. All right.
I discussed this earlier when we were recording the pod with Brandon, and we brought up Addison. I harkened back to 2018 when Oklahoma and Lincoln Riley had Kyler Murray, and they did have 2,000-yard receivers in that year. And so it's not impossible for, even if they spread the ball around a little bit, that you can still have some productive guys. But also that requires them funneling it to two specific guys, and I think that's likely going to be Addison and Mario Williams, but could definitely change. All right, you took two guys on the board here. You're on the turn, so you get back to back. Quentin Johnston and Michael Meyer, two good picks in my opinion. What do you think about those guys?
So I was really hoping Miles Price fell to me. I just haven't been able to get very much of him recently. Basically, everybody that was selected after Addison was kind of just next, one after the other in my queue or basically in my rankings that I'm working off of. So would have loved to have had Price, would have loved to have had Burton, would have loved to have had Downs. Took a quick look at quarterback, and usually I go pretty quarterback heavy, but we're kind of at a tier break there. And I think that Johnston, even though, there's maybe a small chance that he obviously he's had some injury issues in the past. There's a little bit of risk there. I feel like his talent level is right there on par with that group of receivers. So I decided to grab him. And then Michael Mayer is somebody that I just haven't had enough of yet this year. And I have not been very heavy on the early tight end. This is, I think, much earlier than I've drafted any tight end other than a tight end premium draft so far. But Meyer might catch 100 passes this year.
He could.
I mean, there's just an incredible opportunity for him that is fairly unique at the tight end position. I know there's, Georgia, of course, has a couple of top 5 tight ends, basically.
Yeah.
But I just think that, you look at that Notre Dame offense, he is not only the most talented pass catcher, he's a safety blanket. I mean, he's just going to get, I think, peppered with so many targets that he's kind of a can't miss. And I just didn't want to, miss another opportunity to grab him.
No, I don't blame you whatsoever. The only thing I would then say is, like, if it goes a full round here and there's not another tight end taken off the board, I would maybe say that you reached a little bit, but
certainly possible.
But if we start seeing Bowers, Trigg, Kuntz coming off the board here and everything, I would definitely say that you did well with Meyer there.
You don't want to. I mean, I know this might be too much table talk. I don't know, but you don't want to let a whole round. You don't want to get it back to me without a second tight end taken, because I just might take another tight end.
Also, don't worry about the table talk, dude.
We're little warning to everybody out there.
We're laid back here. All right, a couple things in the chat here. Baylor Bear, he says he doesn't really follow full FBS, and he got Lou Nichols in a league the other day. What do we think about him for this year? Well, Mr. Baylor Bear, let me tell you about Lou Nichols. Last year, he was the RB3 in all of FBS, and he finished the season with finishes from week 4 on 8, 132, not a good week. But after that, 11, 15, 2, 14, 1, 3, 12. Absolute monster. Kobe Lewis isn't there anymore. Oh, shoot, I'm on the clock. Where did I go with this? Oh, Marvin Harrison and Sean Tucker go off the board there? Dang. That's a little rough for me. I ain't gonna lie. How do I want to play this? I don't have that much time. But I think I already got my top running back, so I think I'll probably go ahead with wide receiver here. Let's go Kent State, Dante Cephas. That was a little brutal run for me right there, because Mims, McBride, Harrison, Tucker all were at the top of my queue, and then they're just all gone. But yeah, Baylor, you're gonna love having Lou Nichols. That's all I will say. And then Adam Witt says, can y'all talk, or can you being us, can we talk about Gyro Brock versus Cartavius Norton? Nick, I'll let you take that one first.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So I admittedly am not a big recruiting guy. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to guys until they've signed on the dotted line. I can put them in, our depth charts and our Google Sheets. And at that point, kind of my research begins. I'm hoping to change that up a little bit in the future, get started a little earlier. But fortunately, there are some great folks, campus to Canton being at the very top of that list, that really helps me, learn quickly about some of the guys that I just haven't paid very much attention to prior to that point. But I haven't seen, honestly, a snap of well, I can't even think of it. Norton. Yes. I know guys, there are folks like you. I know Mike Bainbridge is one, several other people out there think that he might, end up being the top guy at Iowa State this year. Obviously, Xavier Brock was a highly rated, even higher rated as a recruit than Bryce Hall coming in. Kind of seems like the heir apparent. My projections, again, are incredibly high on whoever that running back one is at Iowa State. I penciled in Brock, and I even downgraded the percentage of rushing attempts, because based on past history, it would have been over 50%, and Brock or whoever we penciled in as RB1 would have been just a runaway. But I feel like, the way Iowa State has used running backs in the past, whoever it is going to be incredibly productive. I shy away a little bit because I tend to, go to who do I know is going to be a running back number one. Yes. And I just haven't done the research, honestly, to give me much insight on if Norton is credibly, going to be that number one by week 1, week 2, week 5, not sure.
So my take is that Xavier Brock will be the RB1 to start the year. Like, he is going to be the guy that they ride for this year. I like Norton much more in Dynasty because I think there's a chance that he takes over this year. Because when you hear the coaches talk about those two, with Jairell, when you hear them talk about Jairell, it's more of like in like a tone of loyalty. And there's like loyalty, there's respect there. He's taken his lumps. He's been behind Breece Hall while Breece Hall has just been absolutely dominant for the Cyclones. And now he's getting his shot. But when they talk about Norton, there's almost more of a talk of upside. They're just higher on the guy. They are more excited. Just in the way that they kind of talk about him, which is kind of the indicator to me that long term it feels like Norton's probably the answer, but they're going to give Brock every opportunity to succeed this year. So I have in redraft, again, I am very much on board with the draft the guy who's going to start week 1, because they have a better shot of holding on to that job than you think that they do. It's the same thing with quarterbacks, same thing with, I guess wide receivers is not as much because there's multiple wide receivers out there. But like for running backs and quarterbacks, draft the guy who's going to start week 1. They have a better shot of holding on. Because again, these coaches aren't looking for reasons to bench guys. If they are an RB1 for week 1, the coaches in their mind feel like they've earned it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's a lot easier to keep a job than it is to win a job. Yeah. So the guy who has the inside track, the veteran in most cases, who's going to take that first snap in fall camp, that true freshman is going to have to do something really, really special to take that job away, to take that first snap in week 1 away. And so it certainly is possible, certainly happens plenty. But it's fairly difficult. So I do shy, everybody wants the sexy pick. The fans love the hotshot freshman, the backup quarterback, all that good stuff. But a lot of coaches, and I do have a little bit of a coaching background, coaches are fairly, creatures of habit, fairly conservative in how they make decisions, and they trust guys who've been around more. So unless there's just a special talent, that guy who's, been in the system a year or two, guy who's a little bit, older, more mature, is going to have not just the first chance to keep that job, but probably, another chance after that. So it to me is just the safer pick. It might not, have the highest upside, and coaches don't always make their decisions on the highest upside. But for me, I find myself thinking through that in drafts like this, where do I want to go with an unproven guy who could, skyrocket? I often don't, and I certainly miss out on my fair share of breakout candidates. But I feel like, I have a pretty good read on who's a solid number one and who, legitimately has an inside track and probably is pretty unlikely to lose that job to a incoming true freshman or transfer or whatever it is.
No, I'm very much at the same mindset as you. I had a thought and it just went poof, gone, bye bye.
I have a tendency to ramble, so you'll have to stick on me.
It is all good. I got five. Now there's 4 picks until my turn. I have 4 people in my queue. I will happily take any of them that make it to me. Let's see how brutal these next 4 picks are going to be for me. Because again, I'll be happy with any of them. All right, at least one of them's going to make it to me. I'll be happy with pretty much any one of these picks. Stephon Cobbs was one of them. I'll give you that. Corum, wasn't quite ready to pick Corum here, but I think that's a pretty good pick. Also, I don't like you, Nick, because you took Dillon Gabriel. I was hoping he would follow me here in the 5th round.
When I saw you had Mims, I was like, well, I better jump on him now. So he's a personal favorite. I really like Dillon Gabriel think that he's in line for potentially a huge season. So
again, I'll bring up the prize picks again and everything. The over-under on his passing is 3265.5. What do you think overall about that? Like 3,000.
Let me look it up real quick. You said 32,565?
Or 3,265.5 passing yards. Oh, so I am up. I'm going to go ahead and take my second quarterback here. Probably wouldn't normally take 2 quarterbacks here, but I like Cameron Ward here in the 5th round.
Yeah, I agree.
Take the upside.
I'm a little surprised, actually, that projection is as low as it is. And this accounts for Gabriel taking 85.6% of snaps. That's just, again, based on past history, kind of spits that number out automatically. But right now we project him at 2,800 yards. If I bump that up to 95% of the snaps, he gets to 31. If he takes 100% of the snaps, that gets him up to 32. So it's
a stay away right there.
It is. That feels low to me, quite honestly, and probably a good bit of what's factoring into that projection. Like I said, I do the team history, the head coaching history, and the offensive coordinator history. And the offensive coordinator is the most important, piece of that. So knowing, okay, Jeff Lebby's calling plays, that certainly has, that makes me think the ceiling is really, really high. Yeah. But, Brent Venables is the head coach there. And even though he's a defensive head coach, he the way that the experiences that he's had in past years, I think will impact the way the team ends up playing on the field. That's kind of why we do it that way across 131 teams. But obviously Clemson in the passing game last year, pretty disappointing. And so that's carrying a good bit of that projection. It's just, can we completely ignore that and say, okay, it's a Lebby offense, I would say talented quarterback? Yeah, probably. We're probably a little bit low, but the projection kind of, I spend as much time on it as I do. Yeah. I kind of have to feel like I have to trust it a little bit. So again, I probably would lean the under, though obviously I took Dillon Gabriel. I think he's got a chance to surpass that projection. And
to be fair, like, again, I'm talking solely passing yards with that over under right there. Again, when you're doing fantasy, you're trying to consider the amount of touchdowns he's going to score, the amount of yards on the ground that he's going to get. That's going to help what makes Dillon Gabriel special. Again, Lebby loves running his QBs. We've seen Dillon Gabriel do well on the ground before. I think he'll be just fine. Adam Witt in the chat says, Zach Evans is going to be such a bust. I'd avoid like the plague. Adam, I'm not, again, I don't want to say bust because that sounds like I'm being too negative on him because, you're looking at a guy who was a former 5-star running back. He's clearly explosive, clearly got a ton of talent. But I also have to take Evans's word when he says that he doesn't want to be a bell cow back. And they clearly took that to heart. They brought in Ulysses Bentley to kind of give him some relief. But at the same time, Evans is extremely explosive. By the way, the other guy I was considering on my last pick just made it back to me, so I'll happily take Mr. Jaden Bray, wide receiver out of Oklahoma State here. But anyway, as I was saying, I'm kind of with you. I like Evans much more in a best ball. So like here, he's fine. Again, I would say, where did he go? Like round 5's not terrible. I probably, if he made it here to me in round 6, I might have been considering him. Might have been. But again, there's other guys on the board I like better than him. Yeet Yeet Boss, again, I love saying that, ask, who's going to be the best Alabama wide receiver this year, Nick? Burton.
Easy. Burton.
Dude, Burton's such a boss. I love him so much. Oh, by the way, you want, again, we'll laugh at this one. Burton receiving yards on Prize Picks. What do you think their over-unders at?
Oh, I have no idea. Did they just put out a number that he might have done at Georgia? I can say that. I have a Georgia diploma somewhere.
I would say that's being extremely kind to Georgia, I'll say that much, but
I project
889.5 receiving yards. That's their over-under.
Current projection, this one's probably a little out there. All right. But again, it's talking number 1 wide receiver at Alabama. The last 3 years, pretty consistent. Currently have Burton projected at just a shade under 1,600 yards.
Holy God!
So that's probably a little high. But if he locks down that spot, chances are, he's going to absolutely dominate. So.
Yeah, so we're all in agreement. Smash the over on Burton on Prize Picks. Again, 889 yards is disrespectful. Matt, I know you're listening. You and John Lobb need to calm down on Nicholas Singleton so much. You can probably wait another round. They keep drafting him in like the round 5 and 6.
Who was that? I missed what you said.
Nicholas Singleton, 6th round.
Oh,
it's too high.
Yeah. See, again, so he's somebody I need to. I haven't seen a snap of Singleton yet.
Oh, you're gonna have so much fun watching him, dude. He is such a beast.
I bet. I mean, obviously there are some people I definitely respect their opinion who are willing to take him. I don't know if I've taken a freshman in a best ball all year, and I've done like 30 drafts so far. So it's just something that for me, I'm just not capable of doing, I guess. And I just haven't put in the work on true freshmen to truly know who's going to make that immediate impact. But I mean, I've seen him listed as a projected starting running back in magazines, and obviously, like I said, there's some folks in the CFF community who think highly enough of him to take him pretty early in drafts. So I am excited to, hopefully things will slow down a little bit for me in the next week or two, and I'll be able to actually get some eyes on some of those top level freshmen, and he's top of the list for sure.
All right, Matt, I'll give you a little bit of credit here. I didn't realize that was Matt's 4th running back off the board. Yeah, there's some upside there. Probably would have gone different position and everything, but I get it. Let's see. Adam Witt says, and you can talk about him, Nick, because you just took him. He says, he doesn't get much mention, but would love to hear your thoughts on Nathaniel Pete. Seems high upside, but kind of risky. What do you think, Nick? You're the one who just took him.
Yeah, he is a little bit risky because generally, like I've mentioned before, I want to know with a pretty high level of certainty that I'm going to get the guy in the role I expect. So in that running back number 1 role, and Pete is in a little bit of a position, a battle for snaps with Elijah Young, with a couple of others. And the reason I'm willing to jump on Pete is that Missouri running back, and also Eli Drinkwitz's history with a number one running back it's been so productive. The track record is so proven that I do think that Pete is, 60, 70% chance of getting that number one job. But I even, manually downgraded the percentage of rushing attempts that I expected and the percentage of touchdowns. And he still grades out. I mean, where is he in my rankings? Running back 19. So top 20 running back. I mean, the ceiling is sky high. So I do think it's worth the risk there. But he's, in an offense that not only will just feed the ball to that top guy in the depth chart, but will get him the ball, out of the backfield in the passing game as well. So a little bit of a risk, more than I usually take. But when there's a track record that's as proven as Eli Drinkwitz has been with that number one running back, I'm willing to take that risk for Pete.
Adam follow-up question said, who would you handcuff with Pete, or would you handcuff anybody? Elijah Young's the name that comes to mind for me. Is it the same one that comes to mind for you, Nick?
He's who I've got projected at number 2. I have a sort of a conflicting thought process on handcuffing. I used to be all for it, and I'm kind of starting to shy away from it a little bit. And if I take a guy that is a little bit of a risk, I'll actually back him up with another risk on a different team and just give myself, okay, if I've got a 60% shot that this guy hits and a 60% shot that this guy hits, that's better than if I have a 60-40 on the same team. So I kind of feel like taking 2 risks is better than taking the conservative approach with the less likely of the 2, the other handcuff, the other side of the handcuff, I guess. So that's sort of how I've been leaning this year. It's a little bit of a departure for me over the last couple of years. But I think there's a little bit of logic to it. And so I'd rather, you have a better chance, I think, of hitting on both instead of giving yourself, a good chance of hitting on one and basically a 0 chance of hitting on 2.
Yep.
You give yourself a better chance of, you might hit 0, but you got a pretty good chance of hitting on 2 as well.
Oh, absolutely fair. I initially was going to go running back here. But there's kind of a tier break at wide receiver after this one guy here. So I think I'm going to let me double check. And I recommend everybody do this, especially now that we're kind of getting the mid rounds and everything. Double check your bye weeks and make sure all your guys aren't off on the same week. All right, looks like I'm good to go there. So if Agvent doesn't snipe me here, I'm definitely going to go this guy. Okay, he took one of my running backs I had in my queue, but I'll go ahead and take a wide receiver here. I'll take Torrey Horton, wide receiver out of Colorado State. Also, Luke Probasco asked, are we certain that it will be Pete? Not 100%, but I would say he definitely. I'd say I'm kind of leaning like 80-20.
I'm never certain of anything. I mean, I don't put 100% on anything, or anything close to it. I would personally, I guess, handicap it at somewhere around 65-25 Pete to Young. I'm not sure that he's going to be fantasy relevant or anything like that, but watch Cody Schrader transfer from what is he, Division II, I think. FCS Truman State. I mean, huge numbers, lower level, but very experienced guy. I'm not even sure he's got a scholarship, but I just watch guys like that, guys who've been highly productive, who come up to the FBS level, just have a tendency to carve out a little bit of a role. The first name that comes to mind is at Northern Illinois last year, Clint Rekovich, who was kind of an H-back, fullback, scored a lot of touchdowns, and obviously there were plenty to go around. But I just feel like guys that put up similar numbers to Schrader have a tendency to do something like that. So I'm actually worried a little bit more not so much that Young will beat out Pete, but that somehow Schrader's going to carve out a role, whether it's as an H-back, whether it's, something short yardage specialist that kind of takes away Pete's easy touchdowns, if that makes sense.
You mean like Michael Cox last year? Good Lord. I remember Michael Cox ticked me off so badly when he just constantly got those 1 yard rushers. Luke says, Pete is available in my league, and I'm thinking about using one of my 4 waivers on him. When you only have 4 waivers, is it 4 waivers for the first half of the year or for the entire year? Because it's for the entire year. That is a little bit of a risk. All right, Nick, you're on the clock here. Who are you going with?
So one of the things I've done in a lot of my leagues, and I feel like if I didn't do it here, it would be a little bit of a disservice just to give myself a chance to talk about it. I have gone super QB heavy this year. And part of it is there are some high upside, high risk guys. And unfortunately, Lepo has actually taken my favorite, understandably so, Tyler Shuck. But Jared Dagey's in that same realm. But there is a little bit of risk. But again, the system, the projections, the history, all that good stuff suggests that whoever wins that job has a chance to be the most productive quarterback in college football from a fantasy level. So part of me in these middle rounds, I might have 6 quarterbacks by round 13. Wow. And I've done that partly because a lot of the guys I draft against are, titans of the industry, whatever you call it. I mean, really guys I really, really respect, who know everything about college football and CFF. And so I'm not smarter than they are. I have to think outside of the box. And they are also a group that has a tendency to go QB late, because they'll, there's so much value in quarterbacks, and there are plenty of guys in systems that are highly productive that you can get as a value. So one, I want to take away their value as much as I can. If they're going to
You're gonna price enforce.
Sure. But also it gives me a chance to take some risks, some high upside guys. And I feel pretty confident in my evaluation of personnel to where I can get a little bit of value, I think, on wide receivers and running backs at a discount later on. But it gives me a chance to say, you know what, quarterbacks are the highest scoring position in the game.
Yep.
And especially in best ball. I mean, I want to hammer it early, take away, steal a little bit of their value, but also give my chance an opportunity. If I miss on Dagey and for whatever reason he gets beat out for that job, I'm not going to be hurt too much because I've got, 3-4 other guys that are going to be consistent performers for me. And I feel like, and unfortunately, I haven't run like a full test on this yet. This is definitely very experimental, but it's been a kind of a theme of mine this year. I feel like the added points of securing kind of a weekly top 15 quarterback, whoever it may be, giving myself enough to, volume to work with to kind of secure that, is going to offset what I might lose on whatever position I'm lacking, whether it's receiver. It's been tight end a lot in the tight end premium leagues. I've been kind of trying to, zig when other people zag and just get a bunch of tight ends late kind of thing. So anyway, it's kind of not a proven theory, but it's something I've been working on this year just because I have to get creative because I'm not going to beat the guys I'm usually drafting against because I do things better. I just have to be different and try to think of a new way to find some sort of edge. And it may not work out, may blow out in my face, but something I'm working on a little bit this year.
No, hey, dude, that's incredible advice. And again, if you ever listen to one of my podcasts where I do with Mitch Hart and everything, he echoes the exact same thing, where not everybody is going to be able to spend the time that a lot of these CFF experts you run into in the league. A lot of people I know have started calling us sharks, like when they get put in one of our leagues and they see there's a bunch of like experts are like, oh, I'm in a tank of sharks right now. You're right. The best thing you can do is find something different, because it's kind of like it again. I'll use a football analogy here. It's kind of like why I believe Kentucky is never going to beat Georgia in the SEC East, because they keep trying to out Georgia. If you try to out expert the experts, you're probably not going to win most of the times, because they have more time, they have more energy, they put more hours into it. They got to do what you're doing, Nick, where you have your own skill set, you have your own thing that really you think gives you an edge, and that's what you focus on, and that's your system, and it's worked. I've seen you perform well in a lot of different leagues.
Well, I appreciate that. I do try to, I sometimes just have to take on the role of the crazy guy sometimes in the way I draft, because, like I said, they absolutely are sharks. Like I said, I've done 30 drafts this year, and basically all of them are with Mike Bainbridge, Josh Xavier. Guys who, if you end up in a league with them, they're at the top of the leaderboard all the time. I mean, Chris K, Andrew Katz, you've been in several of them. John Lobb, of course. Greg Brandt, tons of just really, really smart folks who do this all the time, love it, know the game in and out. So, you got to be a little bit crazy sometimes to find a way, to give yourself a chance. So I've tried to do that more often than not. Don't always do it. Sometimes I'll be a little more traditional, but I definitely try to think outside of the box when I can, and hope for the best. And this year I'll sort of log my results with the heavy QB, and we'll see how it works out.
Yeah.
And it might be something that sticks. It might be something I do forever. It might be something that, like, oh boy, I went 0 for 48 this year. So we're gonna kick that to the curb and try something else in 2023.
All right, I'll respond to a couple things here to some of the chat stuff. First of all, Adam says he's loving these more obscure player discussion. Top guys are boring. Man, we're only in round 10. Wait until we get into round 25, all right? And then Adam also asks, he says he doesn't want to go too obscure here, but he's seen this guy live drafted only once, but he's really high on Tanner Arkin, tight end at Colorado State. Is he crazy? Any thoughts on him? We faded Gary Williams pretty hard. It sounds like he will not be the guy, and it sounds like it will be Tanner Arkin there at Colorado State. And that's a system play. You got a talented young tight end there, and we just saw Cole Turner be an absolute monster for Jay Norvell's system these past couple of years. Hell yeah, why not take the shot on him? He's not going very high. He's basically free in a ton of leagues.
Yeah, Tanner Arkin is where it started, I believe, was a beat reporter. Beat reporters, by the way, don't get enough credit. They do an incredible job, and are so valuable to a lot of the what we're trying to accomplish, most of us. So a beat reporter for the Coloradan did a projected depth chart, talks to coaches, sees glimpses of spring practice, and Tanner Arkin was, projected to be that number one tight end. And like you said, Cole Turner did excellent last year. Obviously, at Colorado State, Trey McBride was an All-American. And so, the tight end position there has a little bit of definitely some just major momentum at the moment. So Arkin projected at number one. I think it's pretty close to still 50-50. I know he was first team All Mountain West just last week preseason, but I do think we probably shouldn't completely write off Gary Williams just yet. But Arkin is certainly a name to know, and the system has been pretty proven over the last couple of years, both coaching staff wise and program wise, that makes you think he's got a chance to be successful. Let me find out who to pick here in the last 20 seconds.
First of all, you got 15 seconds on your second pick. I'll take this opportunity. Again, we got questions. We got what's going on in the chat. I'm trying to balance the both of them here. Baylor Bear, we'll get to your question about the Ole Miss quarterbacks here in a second. I do want to talk about my two guys that I just picked up. Dedrick Parson, Adam commented on this. He's become one of my favorite picks to pick here in the middle rounds right here. He typically goes off around 7, 8, 9 rounds here. Very much, I'm a believer in the Hawaii offensive system this year. Holy crap, that's 3 tight ends in a row right there. But I'm a believer in the Hawaii system this year, but even if Timmy Chang isn't able to get his offensive system going, Parson is a veteran. If they can't get the passing game going, they're going to go through Parson. Parson's also an incredible receiving back. I really like his upside there. I also took Isaiah Bowser. Typically, Isaiah Bowser's been going off in like the rounds like 5, 6, 7, but man, here in the 10th, talking about a guy who has any given week a upside of 30 possible carries. Now, do I expect that every week? Probably not. Is there some injury risk? Probably, but he's my, 4th running back I've taken. I will take that. I will take that and not even really worry about the injury risk at that point. I feel very, very good about that pick. Nick, remind me whenever I'm in a draft with you to put Drake May higher on my queue because you and me are banging this Drake May drum. And again, it goes back to our point earlier about he's got the inside track. No reason not to take the upside on him.
Absolutely. And I was a little bit late to Drake May and the North Carolina quarterbacks, but some folks out there, if you follow us on Twitter, might have noticed he was somebody I highlighted when kind of giving a little bit of a glimpse to those projections that I've referred to a couple times. And, I know he's not Sam Howell. I know that it's a little bit tricky sometimes to just use past results for a player and try to apply them to somebody completely new in the system. Sometimes a player is just better and they'll end up performing, outperforming past results or underperforming past results. But May came out in the projections so much higher than I currently had him ranked just in our CFF rankings, which are based on my personal opinion, past results, obviously, but also things like this draft, mock drafts, other drafts I've been in, ADP. You of course do a wonderful job of logging a lot of ADP information that's been incredibly helpful for so many of us, at least until it's finally started to pop up here for Fantrax. But yeah, May just was somebody that I was missing, and his projection was just 40 spots higher than where I had him ranked. And so I thought, what, at this stage, I probably need to get myself a few Drake May shares. So I made it a priority this draft.
No, Drake, to me, he's got the inside track. I don't believe them when they say that he is I don't believe them when they say that he is somebody, or it's a competition between him and Criswell. I mentioned it before, but Brandon T. Sanders, when he went there to the spring game, keep an eye on how players treat each other on the field. You'll have a pretty good idea of who's actually the starting quarterback versus what they're saying in just the media and stuff like that. Brandon Sanders, when he was at the spring game for UNC, you could just tell that May was the guy. Players responded to him more. The offense just hummed a little bit better under him. He had a bit more control of the line of scrimmage. I really do think he is going to be the guy. And one of those things where, again, I don't think if he starts week 1, he's letting go of that job. And again, we've seen Sam Howell. Again, Sam Howell, I think it was one of the better quarterbacks that UNC's had in a long time. But even still, systems. God, Agvent, really don't like you. 2 quarterbacks I was looking at just back to back on me. Ugh, don't like you. All right, well, I gotta think about this now. Is thinking about taking quarterback here. I want to take KJ Jefferson here. I really, really do. My big problem is the fact that I already have somebody with a quarterback. I already came on board who has a week 8 bye. I don't want to take 2 of my 3 quarterbacks having the same bye week. So I'll probably go a different quarterback here. I'll go Jaron Hall. Very underrated guy, averaged 25 points per game last year. I forget what was his finish last year. He finished as the quarterback 41, so not great by any stretch of the imagination. But if he has a little bit more command this year, actually he was injured in several games if I remember correctly, right? Yeah, he missed out 2 games of the season. The rest of it, he was hitting consistently above 20 points. I kind of like Jaren Hall here.
Yeah, good player. And BYU has one thing that
Thanks, Austin. Love you, buddy.
One thing I think about in best balls specifically is a team like BYU, who in the second half of the season has some just really, really nice matchups. I mean, they do have a late bye week, which is a little bit of a disadvantage in some respects, but they play, they're not week 8, week 9 bye weeks like almost everybody else in college football. So that's a little bit of a bonus. But, they play Utah Tech on November 19th. That's going to be potentially valuable. They play traditionally this year it's they do have Boise State pretty late. Liberty can, be a tougher group of 5 opponent, probably going to take a little bit of a step back this year, but, play East Carolina, play Liberty in the second half of the season. So those are, decent matchups. So if you're looking for a guy might not be an every week producer, but has an opportunity, a few, especially late in the season when your SEC guys are, in the midst of conference play, your Big Ten guys, it's 20 degrees and snowing. BYU is going to have an opportunity, and Jaren Hall is going to have an opportunity for a 40-point week. So it's something that maybe I put a little too much emphasis on it sometimes.
Did I lose Nick, or did they lose me? Okay, looks like I'm still going. Looks like I might have lost Nick there for a little bit. While Nick is reconnecting and everything, I'll go ahead and answer some questions from the chat here. Baylor Barry, you asked about who do I think will end up being the top wide receiver at Ole Miss this year. It's definitely a tough call because, again, I think there is value in Mingo being the veteran, but I think I personally just like Jalen Robinson as a better wide receiver. Robinson is likely going to play that slot role. And so I would personally be leaning more towards Robinson in drafts. All right, we'll get Nick back here in just a second. And I would lean more towards Robinson because, again, we've seen that slot role, like Elijah Moore a couple years ago was absolutely fantastic in that role. It's the reason why I took Marvin Mims earlier, because in that Jeff Levy offense, that slot role really does get a ton of work. And so I think Marvin Mims could absolutely do some work there. And then Austin, you ask, how much do we focus on season matchups or late season matchups when building a best ball? Your gut tells you that you should, and it's part of the reason why MAC guys are so valuable, because they can really pop off in those late games. But the MAC guys are more of an exception than I would say the rule. Because again, we know that almost all the MAC defenses are going to be bad. They're all going to be putting up points. And even still, there's some risk there with the MAC players. And so in terms of pretty much everybody else, though, think about every year that we watch college football. When does a season ever go exactly how we pictured it in the preseason? To me, it's kind of a dangerous game to imagine who's going to be the truly terrible defenses to face later down the stretch, who's going to be the worst ones. It's a little bit easier to guess that in college than in NFL. NFL, I ain't worried about late season matchups at all because God knows, first of all the players just sitting out in the last week or two, but even on top of that, there's so much parity. Austin, yep. I believe it, Austin. Never watched a college football game in your life. And then Adam Waite, you said, how much production increase do I think Gavin Bartholomew gets with Addison gone? Bartholomew is a really interesting one. I'll actually push it over to Austin on that one because Austin is a Pitt guy. But I really like Bartholomew this year. Even last year behind Lucas Kroll, he finished as let me look it up here real quick. He finished as the tight end 41, which, that does, you're like, oh, tight end 41, that sounds awful. But even so, as a second tight end on his team, I find that very impressive. And again, young guy. If you're in a dynasty, I'd highly recommend picking him up. Also, I'm on the clock here. Let me see what I can do here. Let's go system play here. Do I have a guy? I do. But let's go system play. I'm just going to draft him 13th round, much better than where he's normally being taken. I'll take Isaiah Nayor. I think Bartholomew is one of the more interesting guys on Pitt. Again, Keaton Slovis isn't exactly a guy that I love at quarterback, but if you can give him a big target over the middle consistently, I kind of like that quite a bit. Nick, what do you think about Gavin Bartholomew? You just drafted him. I don't know if you meant to, but
I did. Yeah, pretty embarrassing. Don't know what happened to my internet there, but I like Bartholomew. I was pretty impressed with him last year, and he wasn't even the number one tight end. I know there's certainly some chatter that Pitt might operate a little bit differently on offense this year, but I've got him as a top 12 tight end, and so I do have a tendency to kind of go heavy, like I mentioned, on quarterback. I feel that way sometimes about tight end as well. Wanted a really, really solid number 2 guy just in case. And so felt pretty good about getting Bartholomew there. Big time. Big fan of his. He projects well in our numbers, impressed me in a not a starting role, at least a full-time starting role last year. And even if, they get a little bit more conservative with Mark Whipple moving on to Nebraska, Pat Narduzzi being a defensive head coach, tight ends sometimes thrive in that environment. And so I think that his floor is relatively high. Even if he doesn't reach that high ceiling it looked like he had a potential to last year, I think his floor is pretty high, and I feel really, really good about him as my second tight end.
No, again, I think it's a good call. I'm back on the clock here. I think I'm going to go running back here. And again, I know that he's not our favorite running back that this system's had over the last couple of years, but even a guy who I thought was relatively unimpressive last year in Ty Chandler finished as the RB25 at UNC. I'll go ahead and take the shot on British Brooks, who we're fairly certain will be the running back 1 for UNC this upcoming year. And I'll go ahead and take a potential top 25 running back here in the 14th round. All right, Nick, this is a good question for you because you actually pay attention to the defensive side of the ball. Who do you think will have the best defense?
Alabama.
Easy
Alabama. I mean, the Will Anderson is the best player in college football, was last year in my opinion, and he's got 4 or 5 guys who are just as talented in terms of raw talent as he is. There are no weak spots. Even the defensive line, experience wise, maybe isn't what you want for your number 1 defense, but they are absolutely solid. The talent level is there. They took a little bit of a step forward last year after a down year defensively in 2020, just a bit. They've got a chance to be definitely the best defense in college football, but also the best defense we've seen in Alabama in 5-6 years. I mean, they're incredibly, incredibly talented. Love Will Anderson, and they shored up their secondary as well, getting Eli Ricks from LSU, which the corners got burnt a little bit last year, especially late in the season, and that was a bit of a concern. Ricks, assuming he doesn't have any long suspension from a little bit of a legal issue, I think they're going to be just fine, going to be better on the back end and have a chance to be just incredibly, incredibly good defensively. I think there's a pretty big gap between Alabama and the, Georgias of the world who project really well. But I, if I'm in a draft that has a defense component, I'm taking Alabama in the 9th, 10th round. And if I don't get them, if somebody is willing to go higher, then I'll wait till the very end and pick one of my favorites this year has been Toledo. They're just, from a talent standpoint,
perfect.
A step above.
Keep naming the sleepers, because Adam Witt, I don't know if you saw the question, but he did ask, who are some under the radar defenses this year?
Yeah,
so
they're one that I singled out. I mean, the talent level there, and Toledo's been a pretty consistent underperformer as a team the last couple of years. So I am somewhat hesitant there, but I think the level of talent and experience that they've got is pretty unique this season. And I think that they have a good chance and a lot of really, excellent late season matchups. We talk about how high scoring MAC games can be.
Oh yeah.
They don't have to be. I mean, they play in some bad weather. There are some bad teams. And so when you get a potentially dominant defense, and I think Toledo has a chance to dominate on that side of the ball, could work out really well. So I got my fingers crossed. But they're one that you can second to last round. Usually you can pick up a team like that. And if I don't get Alabama, that's what I'm doing. I'm basically hands off until the very end.
I think that's a great call out. Baylor Bear asks, I always seem to do this every year in one league, but I like to get team stacks with good players and just not worry about same bye week. Is this a bad strategy? To me, again, best ball, it is all about the year long. So it doesn't really matter where your bye weeks are, except for if all of your guys are on the same bye week, then you're just not earning points one week, which is obviously a bad thing. Redraft, I don't care. Dynasty, I don't care about bye weeks. If I can pick up a random guy off the waiver wire, plug him into my lineup for a week, call it a day, and I think it was Brandon who called it renting a player. You just rent a player for a week, and then drop him immediately afterwards. Find a good matchup. I don't worry about bye weeks whatsoever then. Eliminators, you really got to worry about those bye weeks. Because if you have one bad week in an eliminator, and you have a lot of your top guys off on the same week, that can turn very badly for you. But I definitely say, unless you're an eliminator, don't worry about it. And again, best ball, I say slightly worry about it, but again, just make sure it's not extreme. If you have a couple guys off in the same week, as long as you have somebody to start that week, I think you're good. Brian Douglas says, Fantrax is fun. This mock Keon Thompson is labeled as a running back in this mock, but wide receiver in the eliminator. Yeah, it's fun that it's fun how they just completely mess that up. Adam Witt says he really likes your Tevalence Hunt pick. Nick, what do you think about that?
That's another one that is projections based, and I didn't actually intend to come out here and try to advertise all the work that we do, but it's been well, it's been pretty evident to me that in the early stages of the off season, I was just way too low on some players and some systems, and specifically Arkansas State wide receivers were one of those situations where, it's not just the team itself. Sometimes I think we get caught up in a helmet logo and think, oh, one of them that's this is probably too deep in the weeds maybe, but I've seen a lot of discussion about the Buffalo running back situation this year and the three guys that could be. I don't care. But I mean, the Buffalo running back situation is not the same as it was when Jarrett Patterson was there. To me, it doesn't matter. And the fact that there are three guys involved makes me want to take a step back even more. I think they're just going to change the offense this year. I know it's the second year for a head coach, but anyway, maybe we'll have time some other day. But, Arkansas State, not only did they do it under Blake Anderson, but last year things didn't change very much under Butch Jones. And, the I look at head coach history, I look at offensive coordinator history and team history, and all signs are pointing toward Arkansas State continuing to, whether it's because their defense is so bad that they just have to throw to try to keep up, or whether it's because that's what they want to do, they set out to do as far as the game plan. Guys like Tre'Valence Hunt, and he might not be the number one. Jeff Foreman might, end up being the guy with the most targets. It's possible. But whoever it is, and both of them are solid options, in my opinion, has an opportunity to get a ton of targets, catch a lot of balls, and eventually put the ball in the end zone. So Hunt is somebody who has been a big mover recently in recent weeks since we got the stat projections finished. The numbers are basically off the charts, and it's something that I just have to pay attention to when there's an outlier compared to my own personal opinion. When the numbers run the numbers, and it's just like like a Drake May, it's like, you know what, I just need to trust the work that I put in to inputting all this information, and it spits out a guy that I'm way too low on. I need to catch up a little bit and get some shares of that player. And Hunt is somebody that I've been trying to gobble up as much as I can in the last couple of weeks.
So I'll ask you this, Nick. One of my favorite things, again, you're on the turn. What I might have done is, McGriff is such a good pick right there. What I might have done is, one thing that always frustrates me about the Red Wolves last year is I could never tell when Hunt or Foreman was going to go off. Because one of them was going to go off pretty much any given game. Just I could never tell who was going to go off. On a turn there, I've done this in one of the best balls in the past where I hit Foreman and Hunt back to back. Is that something that you might be interested in?
I'd be interested in it. I'd consider it, but it's sort of the discussion we touched on a little bit earlier, where I've started to shy away from that a little bit. And instead of securing myself the good side of a 60-40 situation, I'd rather take a chance on 2 two shots at 60%. Instead of one shot at 60% and a potential 40%. So I just decided, Hunt's my guy. It might end up being Foreman, but even if it is, Hunt's going to be productive. So I will, if Foreman doesn't make it back to me, and he didn't, that's fine. I'll take my next shot, maybe with a little bit of a risky pick there too as well. I do, as I said before, like I shy away sometimes from guys who are first-year starters, who are true freshmen. I don't feel comfortable making that leap sometimes.
Fair point.
Where I do is in situations like this, and I feel good enough what the numbers are telling me about the system, that it's worth that gamble. And I don't know. I haven't found the right way to articulate it yet. But this is the scenario where I'm comfortable taking risks like that.
Yeah, makes sense. You're on the clock with your 2 picks. I'll answer some questions from the chat real quick. Yeet Boss asks, who do you think will be the best running back out of the Big 12 and SEC? Big 12, Bijan Robinson. SEC, Jahmyr Gibbs. I'll answer that real quick. And then Adam Witt asks, who of the Buffalo running backs would you take and why? I know you said you're kind of off that whole situation, but Nick, if I held a gun to your head right now and asked you to pick one of those running backs right now, who would you go with?
I think I'd let you shoot me. I don't want to. I don't. I mean, so right now I have Ron Cook projected as the number 1 running back. A lot of people I respect, you included, don't want anything to do with Ron Cook. That's fine. I don't want him anyway. I'm looking at the level 1, the receivers they have coming back. Quinn Williams, pretty impressed with at times.
Yes.
Jamari Gassett, starter last year. Giovanni Ruiz Navarro was a starter in 2020. And prior to that, he's back from an injury. And then they added Justin Marshall and Boobie Curry, Power 5 transfers, as well as Cole Harity, who was a starter at New Mexico State. To me, that amount of experience coming back, that amount of...
Oh no, did we lose Nick again? No. Dang it. I'll go ahead and answer real quick then. For me, Adam, again, I'm a Washington guy. I do like AJ Henderson. I'm mostly just like Nick kind of said a second ago. I'm just off of Ron Cook. I think Ron Cook had his chance, and that he's not somebody that I'm really looking to invest in whatsoever. And I guess I'll take this chance while we're waiting on Nick to come back in here. Again, there's still quite a few you out there. We've been kind of recycling people kind of coming in and out. If you haven't hit that like button real quick, it's free. Just go ahead and hit it. It gets us trending with the right people who might be interested in a stream like this, and then we can definitely try to get up our viewership here. Again, this is probably the most amount of viewers we've had so far. So again, I really, really appreciate you guys for doing that. Again, Baylor, I had a feeling you had already done it, so I really appreciate you doing that, man. Let's see what's going on here in the draft. A couple of guys, Raheem Sanders and Pat Garwo, two good running back picks right there. JoJo Earl, honestly, 17th round. That was a bit of a that's a bit of a shame he fell that far. I didn't take him because I think I already had two week 9 bye wide receivers, so I couldn't take him again. But even still. All right, Trayvon Cooley's off the board. I'm going to take another running back here. This is a guy who I continue to think just flies under the radar, but can have insane volume this year at James Madison. I'll take Percy Aguier, obese running back out of James Madison. Again, the 2 bye weeks hurts a little bit, but man, again, if you can give me a potential 1,000-yard receiver, Jesus Christ, Jared. You can give me a potential 1,000-yard running back in the 17th round, give me that all day long. I love it. Sorry, Nick.
Apologies. Hey, I don't know what's going on with the internet. It's never happened.
It is all right. It is okay.
So I think I was mid-rant with Buffalo. That's okay.
Yes.
But I think there are enough signs pointing toward they're going to throw quite a bit more than they have in the past. Plus the fact that they might split carries 3 ways. I'm just not interested. So even though I'm different on thinking Cook's number 1, doesn't matter. He's basically a co-starter with the other 2, in my opinion. I don't need any of them. But short answer, Cook. But nobody else agrees with me, so that's okay.
Hey, that's where you zag. And everybody else is zigging, you zag. All right, who else we got on the board here? Again, I think I'm going to go quarterback here. I'm going to get rid of one of my quarterbacks because I just took their running back, and I don't want too many people on the same bye. I think he's a good pickup here, especially as we get into this round 18 to 25 range. He should definitely be off the board by the end of it. We'll cover at the very end some people who were surprised. It'll be even more surprising this week if we get through round 25, and there are people who I would be shocked if they didn't come off the board by then. Oh yeah, I know exactly who I'm going to take with my next pick. All right. Any other chats? Eric Richardson. He says in a 10-man league and have pick number 2, want Jackson Smith and Jigba, but not sure. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba is not a bad 102 pick whatsoever. You're basically guaranteeing yourself at least a 1,000-yard receiver right there, one of the most productive offenses in the country. I would say he's absolutely somebody that you should be proud of taking at 102. But again, I would also say, kind of how we were talking about at the very beginning of this, when Nick, we were talking about like player positions we're just more comfortable with. In the first round, you should take somebody. All right, reconnection successful. Perfect. I'll repeat what I just said because I think I dropped out there for a second, so I'll just keep going here. First round, you should definitely pick somebody at a position that you feel like you aren't going to be able to find value later in the draft. Kind of like how Nick was talking about how wide receivers, he feels like he is not very good at finding value in those kind of mid-rounds. He'd rather take some guys early and then take some shots on guys late. Running back is the thing for me. I'd rather have a solid group of running backs early. So That's just kind of how I feel about it. Also, I took Evan Prater in the 18th round because I'm not going another one of these live drafts with Evan Prater going undrafted. Absolutely not. He is a dual threat quarterback in much of the same way that Desmond Ridder was, and Desmond Ridder finished as the QB. What was he last year? He finished as a QB 12 last year. All right, this is an offense that is going to be able to do well with Evan Prater. Evan Prater is at least coming out of high school, a more talented quarterback than Desmond Ridder. I'm excited to see what they do with him, and he's an absolute steal in the 18th round here for me. Nick, welcome back.
Thank you. How are you?
All right. Also, Yeet Yeet Boss says, who do you think will be the top QB in the Big 12? I'm going to double check my rankings. That is going to be, I'm thinking Dillon Gabriel out of Oklahoma.
I agree.
I was thinking Quinn Ewers there, like off the top of my head, but I forgot that Oklahoma is still technically in the Big 12.
I'd be tempted to say Tyler Shuck. I know there's certainly some concern that he's probably on shakier ground even than some of the other guys we've talked about as 60% options. But I mean, I guess my default answer probably should be Texas Tech QB number one, whoever it is. But Gabriel is the, if you're going to say Gabriel versus Shuck versus Morton or Smith, then Gabriel's probably the smarter bet.
Interesting. Chandler Morris comes off the board at round 18. Have we seen Duggan come off the board?
That's been happening a little bit. I blame Andrew Katz. He's been taking Chandler Morris in most of the drafts I'm in with him. But I'll take Duggan later. No problem.
Let's see. Michael Pratt, that's a good pick in the 18th round. All right, you went. Ottman Bell's a great pick. Okay, sell me on Dante Wright.
He was an all-conference player when Steve Addazio was his head coach. So I know that Jay Norvell brought in, some guys who are more familiar with the system, understand that. Guys he has more of a history with. But Dante Wright's just as talented, if not more, than anybody they're bringing in, and was hurt last year. His production went down largely because he was banged up. So the fact that he's just a really, really solid player, the fact that, last year, if you just look at the numbers, don't remember, and it's easy to forget, but don't remember that he missed time because of injury, and that impacted his performance. And the fact, he excelled in a situation prior to the new coaching staff where, not advantageous usually to wide receivers. But now with Jay Norvell coming in, Jay Norvell, in my experience, is smart enough to say, hey, I've got a really good player. I'm going to find a way to use him. I wouldn't be surprised if Dante Wright gets involved a little bit in the running game, jet sweep, stuff like that. So
are you concerned at all? Because you mentioned that article earlier from the Coloridian that did not have Dante Wright as a starter. They had Melquan Stovall as the starter in the slot over Dante Wright. Are you concerned about that whatsoever?
Not really. So I like I mentioned before, I mean, beat writers do just so much great work. However, those projected depth charts and even the official depth chart, especially the official depth charts that we're going to start to see in the next 3 or 4 weeks, I think that there are some folks out there who overreact to those things. I think that it can provide some very, very useful and in some cases actionable information. But for me, and I've got more time than the average person to sit and dig into all these different depth charts, make my own sort of educated guesses on how it's going to shake out. I trust my own kind of how I see things playing out, stacking up. And I'm going to take that information and okay, right, maybe wasn't a starter right away, file that away. He might not, in week 1, but I believe his talent is, good enough, especially when healthy, that I feel like there's a good chance he's going to work himself into a role that is productive. He might not be a starter, but he might end up still putting up numbers and there's plenty of targets to go around at a place like Colorado State. We expect that, yeah, I mean, in the 19th round, he could pay off and be a 1,200-yard receiver. He might be a 400-yard receiver, and I miss out. That's okay. I think the potential upside is high enough that I'm going to scoop him up in this round as many times as I can.
No, absolutely fair. Hold on, I'm taking a look at. Let me check the chat here real quick. Got some booing of Texas. Always a good time for that. Got JW says great content, Jared. Appreciate it, man. We work hard on this kind of stuff. And Adam Witt says Chapin is an under the radar pick. Yeah, I would say so. Not a lot of people kind of giving him enough credit. He doesn't have the dual threat ability that Bohannon has, but I do think he brings a different dynamic to the passing game. What do you kind of think about it, Nick?
It'll be interesting to see. I really like Dave Aranda. I mean, he's high on my list of coaches that I respect the way that they operate their football team. How they get a team ready to play, all that good stuff. I definitely respect the fact that he and his staff knew they wanted to go with Chapin, made the decision early, allowed Bohannon a chance to transfer out. I watched Chapin a little bit last year. We got a chance to see him when Bohannon was banged up. I wasn't blown away, but that coaching staff has seen a lot more of him than I have in practices and meetings, things like that. I trust that they made that decision for a reason. I think I'm a little bit lower on him than someone else in every draft I've been in. Mm-hmm. Someone else has been willing to get him a little bit earlier than I am, so I haven't ended up with him yet. But I'm really interested to see how it shakes out, because there are some signals to say he's going to have an opportunity to be a really, really successful player. I just haven't seen it with my own eyes yet, to the point that I'm willing to jump up and grab him ahead of whoever has the highest opinion of him.
No, absolutely fair. Holton Ahlers off the board there. I don't think I've seen Holton Ahlers go off in a draft this high, but Corey's a smart guy, so if he's a believer in him, I'll give him credit there. There's my boy.
He's someone we've sort of forgotten about a little bit. I haven't seen him go very much either, but he's has a long history that includes plenty of big games. Yeah, so I think he'll actually be. I mean, he'll absolutely be a productive player in this league at least a couple of weeks.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Who else is coming off the board here? So interesting. Kane took over here. He took Jalen Mitchell and Tyon Evans back to back. Again, I know we've talked about the whole double tapping. You're not totally on board with that. But what do you think about the Louisville running back situation in general? We've seen, even when we think that there's going to be some kind of split backfield, they still try to go with one guy. Is there a guy at Louisville that you personally like the most this year?
So I have another slightly differing opinion, I guess, than the most folks in the space. I know that Cooley has been the favorite of a lot of folks, and I understand it. Jalen Mitchell, got the most snaps last year. He's back. I heard some really, really good things about him in the spring. I'm a little bit hesitant to move him lower in the pecking order. They also brought in Tyon Evans. Jawar Jordan is, has some big playability, has made plays as a return man. So it's one of those situations where I might be willing to hop on Mitchell late after someone else has taken Cooley. But it's probably one I'm going to stay away from, just because it's it's kind of going against what I've said before. The track record, as you mentioned, pretty proven. But I just feel like there's so many guys in the mix that the overall percentage that I'm going to get the one that hits is low enough that I might as well, take my shot with somebody else.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, couple questions here in the chat. Adam Witt asks, from a dynasty perspective, which freshman Ohio State quarterback would you rather take? I imagine he's referring to McCord and Devin Brown, like whoever's behind Stroud. I say let somebody else pick first, and you take the second one. And most often the times it's going to be Kyle McCord. I've seen Devin Brown go off in like round 10. Round 9 of a dynasty startup, and you have Kyle McCord still available there in like the 18th, 19th round. So I personally, just from a value standpoint, kind of lean towards just going ahead and getting whoever's there later. Because I think they both have an equal shot, if not McCord having a little bit of the inside track there next year because he's got a year ahead on Devin Brown. What do you think, Nick?
So I am not a Devy expert by any stretch. I rely very heavily on the good folks at campustocanton.com. I am in one Devy league that I have a horrible track record in. A lot of really smart folks in that league. But basically, when draft came around a couple of months ago, I just pulled up campustocanton.com, pulled up the Devy guide. They told me to take Devin Brown, so I did. And we'll see how it works out.
Fair point. Yeet Boss, again, with the Big 12 questions. He is asking who will be the top Big 12 tight end this year. I have Mason Tharp, tight end out of Texas Tech, as my top tight end for the Big 12 this year, but I'm not going to lie. It's kind of a wasteland at tight end for a little bit in the Big 12. Like, there's some guys that I like somewhat of the upside, like Jared Wiley at TCU. I like Jatavian Sanders at Texas. I like actually more than Jaleel Billingsley. So if you want to get a late guy, what's that?
So, well, you're wrong.
I'm wrong?
So, yeah, that's all right.
Come on to my show and
we all
tell
make
me that
mistakes.
I'm wrong. Dang, Nick.
I'm not a very opinionated person. I'm just kidding.
No, I know. That's what kind of makes this a little funny.
I have Ben Sims, Baylor tight end.
Oh,
is my highest rated.
Ben. You're right. Ben Sims out of Baylor. I don't know how I forgot that.
He's a top 20 for me, 19th. And I do actually believe Billingsley. I've taken him maybe in every tight end premium league I've been in. I know last year didn't work out, but the talent is there. I think he's got an opportunity to pop. So I think he'll bounce back. Absolutely could be wrong, of course, but I do think Billingsley's got a good chance to bounce back. But I think Sims is definitely a much safer bet.
Yeah, and Adam Liss says, as a Texas fan, I am correct. So, ha! Alrighty. I'm going to do something here I don't typically do a lot, but, because we added these extra 5 rounds in the last couple of these, again, I'm going to stall here in case Agvent is trying to listen and figure out where I'm going with this. Last couple of these, I've only taken 2 at this position, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and double tap the tight end position here. And we're going to take a guy, I'm going to take as my third tight end, a guy we talked about earlier. Give me Tanner Arkin. I have I just realized I have the entire Colorado State receiving core outside of Dante Wright here. Because I have on this team Torrey Horton, Melquan Stovall, and I have Tanner Arkin. If there's ever a week where Dante Wright just goes off and none of my guys produce, I'm going to be mad. I'm going to be mad. Just be mad. Jesse Matthews is a great pick there. Hunter Decker's here in the 22nd round. I like both of those as well.
So what's our placeholder rule here?
So people can take placeholders as long as they make it clear in the chat of the draft. As far as I can tell, nobody or only one placeholder has been done so far. Brandon Campbell was taken. Where was he taken? It was Aleppo. He took him in the 14th round because he put Ultima Caskell, and that's not Ultima Caskell. Tyron Smith, great pick in the 22nd round, by the way. So what placeholder are you planning on taking, Nick?
So I am. Well, so it turned out I just had something misclicked, but I might have to take one a little later, or I might suggest somebody else take one. Mm-hmm. One of those things I tweeted out last week that got a reaction from you was the Memphis tight end room, right? Has just been incredibly productive. Multiple tight ends have performed really, really well. Also, Memphis has a new offensive coordinator.
Yes.
Who is joining from Marshall, who also has a, pretty. Am I getting this correct? Tim Cramsey from. Yeah, spent time in Marshall. Sorry, he's a second year at Memphis, but the prior 2 years at Marshall, had to check on that real quick. Who also used the tight end really, really well. So Anthony Lanphier, and I just had to refer to my Phil Steele magazine because he actually has a different tight end listed, Caden Precorn, who I need to add to my team profiles. He has him listed at number 1. Lanphier is a junior college transfer, a little bit of a dice roll, but I got Meyer. I feel great about. This is just a pure, if it hits, great. If not, no big deal. Lanphier, based on past Memphis tight end history, has a chance to hit. And it might be creek scoring. But again, if it's him, that's fine. I've got Michael Mayer.
I would hate to be that announcer. Like when they have double tight end or they have a 12 personnel out there, it's like, well, they're bringing out Lanphier and Prescorn, and you're just like trying not to mess that up and laugh while you're saying it. Dallas Dixon, that's a good pick right there.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I've been sort of on autopilot with this one. Just working off of my rankings, which I've said this on other shows in the past. CFF, I really, really love because it breaks me out of my shell a little bit. And a lot of the drafts I've done early this year, I actually will let my opinion be a little bit more, take a little bit more of a lead than I usually do in all the other work that I do, single game, point spread projections, all that good stuff. Yeah. I just let the numbers talk and step back. But CFF allows me to actually experiment a little bit and say, I really like this player. I'm going to go. I think he's going to be, so great, even if the numbers don't necessarily back that up. This draft, it's been sort of because I have to talk and chew gum at the same time. It's been
people don't realize
it's just
how difficult it is to draft and do a live stream at the same time. Like it's some serious multitasking, and I'm also like running the stream back here and like checking to make sure everything's like going well. And
your internet might go out twice and you disappear, and the person who's invited you on and hosts you has doesn't know like where'd he go. So
I kept it going.
It's a lot to juggle. You're doing great as far as I know. I love it.
Adam Witt asks one more question, and I'm sure it's not the one more question, but it's fine. I want more questions. He asks, thoughts on the UTSA running backs, Traylon Smith versus Ty Edwards. I've made it very clear in the past, I am still a Ty Edwards fan. Dude is just built to carry a much bigger load than Traylon Smith is. Now, granted, it is the CUSA, but even still, I think Ty Edwards was a guy that they brought in from JUCO, very under the radar kind of guy. They seem to like him a lot. Nick, where do you kind of fall between Ty Edwards versus Traylon Smith?
So in the very first mock that we did with John Love, who he hosted, I took, and when we did the little write-up, wrote about Brady, Brendan Brady, who was a senior last year, left the team, came back at the tail end of spring practice. They invited him back for a reason, said, hey, we need some depth at the running back position. They went out and got Trey reason. Ty Edwards, an impressive player, a big back. I know that Josh, at CFF Guys, is really, really high on Ty Edwards. I trust him, as far as player evaluation goes, as much as anyone else in the industry. However, I can't help but ignore the fact that UTSA brought a guy basically out of retirement and then added a Power 5 transfer. They did it for a reason. So Edwards absolutely could be the guy. Maybe they're just, needed some depth. But I try to, look at everything in context as much as I can. And the fact that UTSA said we don't have enough at running back twice gives me just a little bit of pause on Ty Edwards.
Again, I get it. I will still draft Ty Edwards if he's there available late. He wasn't this time, which is fine.
I drafted him in the last draft I did. Best ball, it was like in the 25th round or something because his value's gone way down. So absolutely, at that point, go for it. But yeah, just as the heir apparent to Sincere McCormack, I think there are a couple of signs that say, there's a little bit more to be concerned about there than we thought there was, 3 months ago or even 2 months ago.
Fair, I guess. Also, this is the perils of doing too many drafts at once. I just took Braden Shager, quarterback out of Hawaii. I like him. I like the upside of that offense. But in my head, I was like, oh yeah, I have both Zion Bowens and Tamatoa Makiala-Timalala on this team. Might as well grab their QB. And I just realized that that's a totally different draft that I'm in. And so now I just have him. Now, granted, there's still a stack there with Dedrick Parson, who's going to be a receiving back. But even still, this is why you don't do too many drafts at once, y'all. They start to blend together. It's really, really bad sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, I'm going to draft. I originally was going to, I was paying attention to my bye weeks, but, the people, again, I have 2 running backs on week 9 already, and I wanted to, steer away from taking another week 9 running back, but, the guys who are on week 9, I got, out of my top 4, out of my top 5 here, all 5 of them have a week 9 bye, so screw it, I'm going to take one here. And here's my heir apparent to one of my favorite guys last year, Tugboat preseason. And so I'll take the guy who's going to step up this year in his place, even though Tugboat didn't really work out for me last year. But Say Bungera, staff is really excited for him at Ohio. Lord in heaven, I should pull up the guide, our CFF guide, which, by the way, Campus Canton has released our CFF guide. Absolutely go check it out. It's only $20, one of the best deals you could possibly get this offseason. 230 pages, team breakdowns for all 131 teams, player breakdowns for the top 36 quarterbacks, top 48 running backs, top 60 wide receivers, top 24 tight ends. Absolutely go check it out. Only $20. Freshman profiles in there as well. But even so, when I did the Ohio team breakdown, I was shocked by how well their offensive line produces line yards. And I thought to myself, man, if we could ever get a running back to really take over behind here, and they ran the ball, I believe their neutral game pass script, which if you don't know what that means, it's on a neutral down, which is, I believe, first and second downs, and I think it's within 10 points, the score of the game's within 10 points, that they only threw the ball 28% of the time. Every time else, they ran the ball, and I believe that was 4th in the country, which, if you know anything about college football, 1, 2, and 3 are service academies. So they ran the ball an absurd amount of times. So if you can get a guy like, say, Bangura, who has been named the starter already, he could easily be very, very productive for you here in the 24th round. I like him a lot, if you couldn't tell.
I don't disagree. I haven't picked him up myself, I don't think. But Ohio is one of those, the system has been pretty much in place. They had a new head coach last year, but he was promoted from offensive coordinator. He had been there since, a decade or so, one of the most consistent offensive staffs in, FBS college football under Frank Solich. So not much has changed. And so if you can get the go-to guy and certainly, have read some buzz and Bagura is a name often mentioned. Seems like a pretty solid bet to me that he's going to be impactful.
Also, Baylor Bear says, I do not like offensive scripts. The great thing about a team like Ohio and UMass is that they don't believe in game scripts. They
Everything's different at UMass though.
Everything's
different this year.
They will run the ball. They will run the ball no matter how far behind they are because they just want to get out of there. They know they're going to lose, and so they're just going to run out the clock, hope their guys don't get hurt, and call it a day. That's why Ellis Merriweather is actually a really interesting pick this year because even though UMass is going to be behind in a ton of games, he's still going to get like 200 carries. Now, don't expect him to get more than maybe 5 touchdowns on the year, but even still. All right, you kept your promise. You're taking Max Duggan here.
I figured he's worth a shot. I mean, the upside of a Sonny Tykes quarterback, and yeah, it might be Morris, but it might also be Duggan. So I think that he's somebody that helps offset a little bit of the risk that I took there with a guy like Daggy, with maybe even a Drake May or an Aiden O'Connell, because O'Connell hasn't been hasn't come out of fall camp as the starter in either of the last 2 years. May's a first-time guy, and Criswell probably, pretty solid bet to start the season number 2. But, injuries always happen, things like that. So it's to me, it's a way of getting insurance without having to handcuff, is just roll the dice on 2 or 3 guys, go a little bit heavy at a position. And if you hit, I mean, I could run away with this league if Daggy is the number 1, Duggan is the number 1, May is the, it just could give me an unstoppable, group of quarterbacks at the highest scoring position if everything clicks right. And if a few things go wrong, hopefully enough goes right that I'm going to be competitive.
Yeah, and this isn't one of your typical high stakes leagues or anything like that. We put $5 down on this. But even still, like if you're in a higher stakes league and everything,
this is life and death.
Baylor asks,
everything, it all counts the same. It's a win or a loss.
You're right. When you die and go to heaven, God will stand at the gate and say, "How many fantasy leagues did you win again?" 3. Get out of here. Anyway, Baylor, I went a weird direction with that one. Baylor Bear asks, do we think there'll be anybody of fantasy value on Florida this year? Anthony Richardson's one of the biggest upside guys you can take. Montrell Johnson, if they don't split that backfield, is a very interesting guy. Wide receivers, I don't know.
And I've been suckered in by Justin Shorter for 5 years now, but maybe the coaching staff change will do him some good, and somebody's got to catch Anthony Richardson's pass attempts, and certainly Richardson's biggest upside is on the ground. But I think if you can pick out the number 1 receiver, I do believe that there's the chance for some value, but also. And again, the reason I do, look at not just the team history, but the head coach and the offensive coordinator history, doing it that way spits out some pretty productive, running back groups. And the track record at Louisiana was not one go-to guy, but they were productive enough on the ground that, there would often be multiple value CFF value running back. So the question for me, it might be Montrell Johnson, but I think that Naquan Wright is somebody that's a little bit underlooked or overlooked, I should say. I know Lorenzo Lingard, highly rated. I've seen him at the top of depth chart projections and things like that. I think that 2 of those 3, however they shake out, could be somewhat productive. It's just a little bit of a question: who's it going to be?
I would say Montrell is probably the safest out of that bunch because, again, he followed Napier from Louisiana over to Florida, so there's a connection there.
And he was good. He was good last year.
I agree with you. Naquan, again, a lot of people like to then go to Lorenzo Lingard, but again, I'm agreeing with you. I think Wright could be that next guy up, especially now that Bowman's out of there. I think that kind of cleared up a lot of things with Bowman. We have finished the draft. We have gotten through all 25 rounds. Again, I cannot thank enough all the participants from this draft. Let me run through you guys real quick. Thank you, of course, our honored guest, Mr. Nicholas Ian Allen. Thank you, Matthew Hicks. Thank you, Carp Golf 926. Thank you, Lepo. Thank you, Justin Nottingham. Thank you, Mr. Kenny Linson. Thank you, Ryan Ralph. Thank you, Corey Cavander. Thank you, myself. Thank you, Agvent. Thank you, Tiger Bob. And thank you, Mr. Kane. Really appreciate you guys. You guys were awesome tonight. And thank you guys so much for all the questions in the chat. We're going to keep going here for just a little bit. And we're going to talk about some guys that each of us were surprised in 25 rounds were not taken off the board. And I'm looking at my list. There's a couple guys here I'm a little surprised by. But then we'll pretty much maybe give some thoughts on our own teams. If you are participating in this draft, I can already see in the chat, some of y'all might want some feedback and everything. DM me. It can be on Discord, on Twitter. I will then let you know how I think that you did. I'll try to give you a score out of 10. I think that's the system I'm going to kind of go for going forward here. I'm sure you can DM Nick as well. I'm sure he'd be willing to give you guys feedback as well. And I'm sure he could probably give you some awesome projections and be like, hey, you got a really good value here because my projections like him a lot. So that being said, again, thank you guys for drafting. Let's dive into some of these guys that we were a little surprised did not get taken here. We'll start with quarterbacks. Nick, any quarterbacks stick out to you as guys that you were surprised did not come off the board?
Not at first glance. I do think that, and I understand why a lot of people have completely written them off. I think in a draft like this, had I not gone as QB heavy as I did in the middle rounds, I might take a late flyer on a guy like DJ Uiagalelei. I know everybody is, thinks that he's poisonous or whatever right now, but this time last year, I mean, he was a, top 20 pick. And there's a reason for that. And, sometimes guys are able to bounce back. There's certainly, plenty of risk there, but I think as a late round flyer, he's somebody I might be willing to take a chance on. Everybody else is more, system plays, I guess. I would be willing to go for somebody like DJ Irons really late. He's somebody that hasn't even gone very much in some of the even deeper drafts. And this is about, this is pretty deep. But somebody that, again, if you look at the production of a Joe Moorhead quarterback, starting quarterback, especially somebody that can run a little bit, and DJ Irons can, might be somebody worth, taking a shot on. Todd Centillo at James Madison, very similar, very manageable schedule. Can throw a little bit, known more for his running, but James Madison has some really talented receivers. Centillo, I think, is, got the potential to be fantasy relevant. So no glaring misses, but there are certainly some guys, if I were in a position to, throw a dart late, certainly some folks that might end up being relevant that are worth a late round pick.
Yeah, Todd Centillo is going to be the number one name that came out of my mouth. We saw Cole Johnson. If he was able to, again, this is the upper range, I think, of him, but if he repeated what Cole Johnson did last year in terms of stats, he would be a top 10 quarterback for CFF this upcoming year. Again, do I expect that? No, but if you do like 80% of that, 70% of that, you're still looking at a very, very good quarterback for CFF, especially a dual threat guy. I think Centillo is absolutely being underrated right now. And there's also a trio of Mac quarterbacks that I'm surprised didn't come off the board. Brett Gabbert, Jack Salopek from Western Michigan, and Daniel Richardson out of Central Michigan. I think three guys, again, just grabbing and stashing some Mac quarterbacks for some of those later games, I think absolutely could be worth it. And then one last one. I didn't see Gary Bohannon down at South Florida come off the board. I think he is set up much better than people are giving him credit for. Xavier Weaver and I'm blanking on the other wide receiver there.
Well, they have Jimmy Horn, and
Jimmy
they
Horn,
also
that's who it
brought
was.
in Aju and
Joffrey
brought in
Brown.
several. Yeah, Coffrey Brown, exactly. There's some talent there for sure.
So again, he's surrounded, and then you also got a good running back in Jaron Mangum. I think that offense is set up better than people are giving him credit for.
Yeah, yeah. A closer look, I will say that some favorites of some of the people that I've drafted a lot with this year. Ben Bryant, Cincinnati, is still on the board. Jeff Sims, even though he was banged up last year, somebody that can pop in a single, 1 week, put up 40 points, might put up 7 the next, but somebody that certainly could be valuable in this setup. And then one that I know, friend of ours, Chris Moxley has written up the Georgia Southern offense. Kyle Van Treese might be worth a look. That offense is night and day for 2022 than it has been the last handful of years. They're gonna throw quite a bit. Brought in some folks from the Western Kentucky coaching tree, and a lot of young coaches, offensive coaches that again, some indicators, not a guarantee, but some indicators that they are going to open it up and throw quite a bit. And so, Kyle Van Treese seems like he's got the inside track to that. Certainly, I think worth a flyer if you're looking for somebody late.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on to running backs here. I got 2 running backs that really kind of stick out here for me. First is the aforementioned Jaron Mangum out of South Florida. I think that offense, again, is going to set up for better success this year. He is a guy that last year, when I just needed 15 points, I could usually go and find him off the waiver wire, pick him up for a week, get my 15 points out of him, drop him back off. I think there is some value in having some guys like that on your roster just to give you a safe floor every single week. A little surprised he didn't come off. And on a more upside part of it, Day Hunter at Liberty. Again, Malik Willis is gone. That offense is going to be changing its identity a little bit this year, and it's going to need to find its production elsewhere besides a quarterback that can run. Jonathan Bennett or Charlie Brewer, I don't think either one of those are guys that we're expecting to put up Malik Willis rushing numbers. So, I think the upside on Day Hunter, and he's gotten rave reviews coming out of spring camp. What do you think about those 2 guys, and what running backs were you kind of surprised didn't go?
Yeah, I certainly, the Hunter thought is I think I absolutely agree. I mean, Malik Willis being gone certainly creates the potential for more opportunities for a running back. I liked watching Day Hunter when he was at Hawaii, and they might end up having a running quarterback again. But I agree that there's certainly going to be more carries to go around with the running back position. A few names that kind of jump off the list for me here. At 4 come to mind. 4 that I've drafted on occasion in the past, and I'm looking at my team, and I probably should have gone for some of these guys over some of the players I actually drafted. One, I probably took Jordan Waters from Duke quite a bit early. He probably should have been a last round player. And then Tizon Henry, obviously they brought in another transfer that is kind of expected to maybe edge him out for the running back 1 duties there. I probably should have looked at a Chance Bell. I know similar situation to what's going on at Houston. There's some folks that have kind of soured on him that he didn't necessarily, take the job and run with it so far. Again, I think that the system at this point is pretty proven, and he's the incumbent, or at least the guy with the inside track.
What do you think about Keenan Christensen then?
So when you bring in a guy like that, there's a reason, similar to what I said about UTSA earlier. Mm-hmm. There's either the need for depth, the ability to, add something new at a position. Bell's not necessarily kind of that home run threat. And, when you're going in, whether it's San Diego State or Houston, you have an opportunity, some guys to bring in Power 5 guys who want to move a little bit closer to home. And maybe you can add a guy who's a bit more dynamic from, a Power 5 program. Nevertheless, I do kind of rely on give me the guy who's been there as a little bit of an inside track. One that I also would go. I know that people are really high on Braden Bennett at Coastal Carolina, and I understand that. Mm-hmm. Really impressed with him last year. But we are completely forgetting about Reese White.
Yep.
And Reese White was productive last year. He was ahead of Bennett on the depth chart, just got banged up at the end of the year. And beyond that, even if it wasn't the fact that Reese White has a legitimate chance to be the starter there, the guy who ends up, getting the most carries, Coastal Carolina is going to have two fantasy relevant running backs most likely. So even if we think Bennett is overwhelmingly going to get the number one carries, we still probably should draft White because they've been able to produce a second guy who's been productive.
Especially in best ball where you don't have to guess who goes off any given week. That's the most frustrating part about the Coastal Carolina running back situation sometimes is you never know who's going to get it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And similarly, and this is a guy that I've drafted a couple of times late that you can get anytime you want him. Tyrell Robinson at Army. Army is always very difficult to predict because they split the quarterbacks run, fullbacks run, multiple slot backs run. But Tyrell Robinson is a pretty special talent, and Army plays, according to my numbers, the weakest schedule in college football.
Ooh.
They have 2 bye weeks. There's a lot going against it, style wise, personnel wise. But Tyrell Robinson, one, can add some catches. Can add some receiving yards, but is the guy that can, take it 70 yards and score. They're playing weak opponents, one after the other. The volume's not going to be there, but he's another guy who, 2 or 3 times a year has an opportunity to put up a 30-point game just based on, a couple of long touchdown runs. And so he's somebody I'm taking a late flyer on. And he's, not going to be an every week producer, but I think he's going to pop 2 or 3 times and could end up being the difference between, winning this league or not.
I think that's a great call. And again, I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, like you can get Tyrell Robinson for free pretty much anywhere. So like, why not pick him up in a best ball where you don't have to get, like you said, like we said many times, don't have to guess when he's going to go off. All right, let's move on to wide receivers here. Wide receivers that I'm looking at here, mostly I'm looking at a lot of system plays. Guys that, like, I think it's like if you're in a best ball, take the shot on the system. So top of the list, Roma Dunze, wide receiver out of Washington. Love that Kalen DeBoer offense over there. May not hit year one, but why not take the shot there? I honestly prefer a Dunze over McMillan. That's just my preference. Gary Bryant Jr. out of USC, I think is kind of an interesting play. He's very much a zag. Everybody loves, for good reason. You love Jordan Addison, you love Mario Williams, but Gary Bryant likely has that other outside position kind of locked down for now. He's an incumbent in the system. Maybe he gets a lot more run than we're kind of giving him credit for. He took over for Drake London last year and produced in several spots. So I think it's a very interesting kind of later round pick. Jerand Bradley, wide receiver out of Texas Tech. Going to be an outside guy, probably taking over that Mitchell Tinsley role. If you're thinking Miles Price is more the slot guy, I think Bradley out of Texas Tech could be an interesting play. And then I've been off of this guy, but I'm kind of surprised that nobody took the shot on him. Corey Brooks, wide receiver out of Alabama. I think the starting lineup is going to be Burton, Earl, and Harrell. But Brooks, I think, is still probably worth a shot. Like, I don't think Harrell's locked down that other outside receiver. And Brooks very much reminds me of more of a Mechie type receiver than he does like a Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith or anything like that. So if they're looking to have that possession type of wide receiver out there, Brooks could be that guy. So I'm kind of surprised nobody took him through 25 rounds.
You know what? I would have taken him. The apostrophe threw me off.
Oh, really?
He's wide receiver 54 in my rankings. ahead of guys like Hassan Beydoun, Eastern Michigan, Mitchell Tinsley, Penn State, Jaden Wally, Mississippi State, even Jeff Foreman, Arkansas State, who we talked about a little bit. And I remember typing him in as we were talking, and I put JAC, no results. Oh, he must have been taken. The apostrophe got me. So maybe it got somebody else too. I don't know. But yeah.
Could be. Type in Brooks next time.
Right.
That'll narrow it down.
Oh, and I made the change in my rankings. I didn't have the apostrophe. So now it's there. So I will try to, Brooks, you make a great point. But also hopefully I help myself a little bit there as well. I agree. It seems like just the volume of wide receivers we took, there aren't too many just glaring misses. One that I think is flying under the radar quite a bit. You took Cameron Ward, in the 5th round, right?
I did.
Deshaun Stribling, I'm sure went.
He went the pick after.
There you go. Somebody else has got to catch passes there.
Yeah.
Right. And a guy that we completely forgot about, who was a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick this time last year before he ended up getting injured in fall camp, Renard Bell. So
I agree.
The wide receiver position, there are a handful of players who missed most or all of last season due to injury, who could end up being quite productive. Was Donovan Green?
I was literally just looking up to see if
he did. He was.
I'm like, I don't see him here, but
Justin took him in the 24th. So great pick there. He's another guy who's going far lower in most drafts than he should because he missed all of last year with a torn ACL in a high volume offense. So excellent pick. But he falls in that category as well. But yeah, I'm scrolling through the ADP. Jair Shorter's another guy who missed a lot of time with injury last year, might be able to bounce back. A couple of names that come to mind who I feel like I've gotten some pretty good value on late, especially in best balls. They're not sexy names, but they're kind of those weekly producers where the floor is relatively high. So if you swing and miss on a couple of high risk guys with Smoke Harris from Louisiana Tech and with Corey Gamage from Marshall.
I agree with both of those.
Those are solid, safe picks who are, Smoke Harris averaged 15 points a game last year, right? Where's Gamage? I think he actually might have been taken.
I remember him going off the board.
So good, whoever took him. I don't have it right here in front of me, but that's somebody who's been undervalued, so far this year. But I think at the wide receiver position, there's so many names to keep track of that we forget guys who are injured, guys who, aren't super sexy, don't have the highest ceiling. But if you take some swings with other guys, might be worth it. One last name. When was the first time you drafted this year?
February.
For me, it was like February, right?
Yeah.
When did Xavier Williams, Utah State, the transfer from Alabama, where did he go in that draft?
God, that was probably
6th round, something like that. Maybe 10th at the latest. He went undrafted. So, yeah, we know some other names now. Brian Cobb's probably the safer bet to be number 1. McGriff has been there, big target, hearing some good things. A couple of other small guys, got a little buzz in the spring. But Xavier Williams still there. So somebody's got to catch all those passes in that Utah State offense. Williams is certainly lost a lot of he's nobody's favorite anymore, but still a decent chance he becomes relevant. So might be worth that last round flyer.
See, again, I'm glad to see that both Cobbs and McGriff are now kind of top two consensus wide receivers for that system. I like Tyler Vaughn there for a little bit, but again, just more and more I'm hearing out, I maybe was a little too high on him. One of the prouder things I will be of this offseason is I feel like I was one of the first guys on Brian Cobbs. Because when Nate and I discussed it before the spring happened and everything, I said, first of all, I was off on Xavier Williams. I was one of the first people to really point out the fact that, hey, this man has caught 3 passes in his entire career at oh, I was trying to look up Xavier Williams, but it turns out in my ADP I accidentally have Xavier Williams, the tight end from Kent State,
Oh, there you
listed.
go.
So I need to fix that later. I was happy to see now that, like, again, I was on Cobbs early, off Xavier Williams. I'm glad to see the industry's kind of come around to the standpoint that I was at. We were very much overhyping the fact that Xavier Williams was just coming from Alabama, completely ignoring the fact that during his entire 3 years there, he caught 3 passes for 24 yards. This was not a guy that just kind of lost out to younger guys or anything like that. He was never really a factor while he was there. Versus Brian Cobbs, where he was a factor towards the end of Maryland last year. Again, it's just he showed out. You have guys like Demas coming back from injury. You bring in a guy like Jacob Copeland, writing's on the wall for a guy like Cobbs. So I like him quite a bit. And where did Cobbs go in this draft? Because I remember seeing him go, and I'm like, that's a good value for him.
I see the 11th round.
Yeah, 11th round. Perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect range for Brian Cobbs.
Good job, Corey Cavender.
Some people were taking him as high as the 4th, 5th round. I'm like, I can't do that. But 11th round, love that.
Yeah, for sure. We did a really good job, I think, as a group
so.
At tight end.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is just kind of system plays. Xavier Gravett, tight end of Coastal Carolina. Somebody's got to replace Isaiah Likely. Oh, you got something?
I'm glad you brought him up because I understand it. And it makes sense. You know, you look at the Coastal Carolina. I'm actually kind of proud of us for not drafting Xavier Gravett. Okay. I could be completely wrong about this, but his role at Coastal Carolina last year was a blocker.
Okay.
All the things I've been reading about, the team transitioning from 2021 to 2022, basically they're saying, we don't have Isaiah Likely anymore. We don't have another guy like Isaiah Likely. And so that I'm not always a take what coaches say as gospel. But that kind of spoke to me a little bit to think, okay, it's not just going to be a plug and play situation where the tight end at Coastal Carolina is going to be productive. We expect to drop off a little bit, at least, whoever it was going to be. Yeah. But Gravett specifically, based on what I'm seeing, probably isn't the perfect fit to even be, the productive receiver, even if there was going to be one for Coastal Carolina this year.
You hear that noise, Nick? That's the sound of Gravett dropping in my rankings. Appreciate that great information right there. That's always something I'm a little worried about, though, because we think, oh, this is going to be the next tight end up at like a school that produces good tight ends, and I think it might have been the same trap we fell into with Gary Williams as well, where maybe Gary Williams is more of a blocking tight end than a pass catching tight end. It's kind of like when you go to Georgia. There's a very big difference between Darnell Washington and Brock Bowers. Now, Darnell Washington can still catch passes, don't get me wrong, but those two play a very different role in that offense.
I hate to disagree with you again, sorry. But Gary Williams, I mean, if he's a blocking tight end, 5 touchdowns, 21 catches last year, not bad. I was actually going to say, I know where Arkin is moving up draft boards, and I understand it. I'm going to take a flyer on Gary Williams probably because, the guy has some experience catching touchdown passes, and that's pretty rare at the tight end position. And, they maybe neither of them are productive. We kind of forget a little bit that Jay Norvell didn't use tight ends a whole lot until Cole Turner came around. He was kind of a little
bit of a special.
He was. He was just a big, slow wide receiver was what Cole Turner was. And they used him. They made it a point of emphasis to use him in the red zone. They might not do that at Colorado State. Sure. Then again, they might have 2 guys that they love and try to get involved. So I think Williams, now is actually undervalued because he has had a little bit of production. I mean, the guy caught 4 more touchdowns than the All-American Mackey Award-winning tight end on his own team last year.
That is true. It was very annoying.
Right.
One more name I'll throw out here at tight end. He's the next guy up on my list here and everything, and that is just another system play. Mason Tharp at Texas Tech. I saw Cup come off the board here, but Cup has the injury history, and that's not the whole reason I'm off on him. I just really like the idea of having a 6'9" target in the red zone for a Zach Kittley offense that's going to score a whole bunch. So give me the upside of that at a tight end. Again, do I see him being the go-to guy in the offense? Obviously not. But just give me a big old target like that. It's something that I don't think any of the other receiving weapons on that team bring. Yeah, I'll take a shot on Mason Tharp there. Only reason why I didn't take him is because I already had somebody at tight end with a week 7 bye.
Yeah, I completely agree. The upside is there with Cup, but we haven't seen it yet. Tharp got a good bit of playing time last year, and he's a big target. I mean, yeah, you're hoping some red zone targets in that offense going to have an opportunity. I drafted him a lot early this year when Cup transferred, kind of got a little lower on him, obviously, but I think for sure. Yeah, I completely agree. Tharp has got potential to, put up at least a few big games just because of his red zone potential.
Yeah. All right. I think that pretty much brings us to the end here. Again, we've been going a good long while. Nick, you've been an excellent sport. You've been awesome, man. I'm sure everybody's been loving the analysis you've been bringing. You've been absolutely awesome. Anytime you want to do this again, just hit me up, man. Again, this has been awesome.
I appreciate it. Thank you for all that you do for the CFF community. Putting things like this together helps a ton of people. We just started the conference-specific best balls that you run. Incredible amount of work on your end. Really appreciate it. It's fun. New ideas. You are out there front and center, doing a lot to promote this game, which I've grown to love in a very short time. My CFF history is not long, like 3 years basically. And I really, really appreciate the work that you do and the fact that you're willing to go out there and promote the game and put on, events like this that help a ton of people, help grow the game.
Yeah.
Really, really appreciate it. So thank you for all you do.
And again, I can't do it without you guys like you and the other guys in the space welcome me in. Last year, that was one of the biggest surprises I had was when I first started. You guys just, again, welcomed me in with open arms. And I can't do it without the guys who are watching tonight. I can't do it without the guys who are here ready to draft every Sunday night. Some of these guys we're drafting with tonight are here every Sunday night wanting to get in practice. Some of you guys are here for the first time. I love each and every one of you guys out here. You guys have always been awesome out here. None of you are coming in here just being jerks or anything like that. It really, really helps to spread the word about CFF when everybody's being really nice to each other. So I really appreciate you guys for that. With that being said, I think it's bedtime, and I really appreciate all of you guys. Again, everyone in the chat, it's been awesome in the chat tonight. Let's keep it up next week with the amount of questions. That was awesome. Can't wait to go back and look at all. I hope I didn't miss any questions, but if I did, I'll try to DM or answer people, because I think I know everybody's Twitter handle that was in the chat tonight. But even so, it's been awesome, y'all. Really appreciate it. And y'all have a blessed week. See you guys next Wednesday. Jesus, you can tell I'm tired. See y'all next Sunday night. Have a good one.